To our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. I'm Brandon Adams on what was a big day for the Georgia Bulldogs, getting a blowout win against the Missouri Tigers. We'll talk about all of that with you here over the course of the next few minutes here. Obviously, a lot of that conversation is going to center around the fact that Georgia fans many of which had wanted to see JT Daniels return at quarterback. We're curious over the course of the last few weeks maybe why he hadn't. Well, today that wait ended. Daniels does get some work in there for the second half for the Dogs. So we'll talk about how that impacts the rest of the season going forward and how everything now shakes out for UGA after getting a big win today against Missouri and continuing its stretch here as the number one team in the country and showing today maybe in the totality of the game why that's exactly what Georgia is right now. So your chance to weigh in on all of that. We will do that over the course of our time together. We're obviously live here at the UGA Bookstore, and a lot of folks stopping by to say hello. And if you're leaving the stadium, our invitation to you is to come by and see us. You'll notice I got the holiday tree here. It's kind of a UGA, almost a UGA-themed holiday tree. You got the white, the red, and the black. So obviously you got the Georgia theme going, you got the holiday theme going, and right down there on the first floor of the UGA Bookstore, tons of folks getting all of the coming and getting all of the holiday gifts and getting stocked up on the UGA apparel. You see me, I'm wearing a very comfortable sweatshirt today. It was cold in Athens today, cold really for the entirety of the game. Even in the sun, I don't think folks ever got really feeling too warm. And so it feels nice to be wearing a good-looking sweatshirt and a nice, comfortable sweatshirt from the UGA Bookstore. So I'm feeling really good with that. And hopefully you're feeling really good wherever you are. Your chance to talk about everything that goes down in a 43-6 win for Georgia against Missouri. A couple quick thoughts from me, and then we'll dive in and get your comments after that. I think that the presence of Daniels in today's game was interesting from this standpoint. That if you look at over the course of the years for Georgia under Kirby Smart, Smart's been a little bit of a one quarterback at a time type guy. If you'll think back, obviously, folks remember 2018 where Jake Fromm took the lion's share of the snaps when Justin Fields came in the game. Oftentimes, Fields wasn't really given the chance to throw the football and almost be a quarterback. He was a little bit more of a mop-up duty, hand the ball off type guy. 2017, the year before that, when Fromm took over for Jacob Eason, when Eason got injured in the first game, once Eason returned back to health, there were those moments where a lot of Georgia fans wondered, well, maybe you should get Eason some duty. Maybe you should get him an opportunity to kind of be involved here. And that's kind of not what happened, that Georgia, for the most part, stuck with Fromm exclusively, really not even giving Eason much of a chance to do much, even in late games. Georgia had a lot of blowouts that year. So if you think about that as a little bit of a precursor for what's happening here this year, the fact that Georgia did turn to Daniels in the second half today, the fact that they let Daniels throw the ball a little bit today, Smart in particular, letting Daniels do that, I think it gives you an indication that JT is still an option for Georgia. This is not a settled situation where they've decided that down the stretch for the rest of the season, Stetson's going to be their guy, and they've now decided to exclude JT Daniels. I think the presence of Daniels in this game today, I think leads you to believe that, no, he still very much is an option for Georgia. And I think it also reinforces this, that quite possibly the things that Smart has been saying about the quarterback position over the course of the last few weeks, perhaps they were true. And I don't say that sarcastically. I say that for the people who maybe sometimes think that Smart has a tendency to want to put his own spin on certain topics, quarterbacks included. The fact that Daniels was more ready to play last week, but only just at that point returning to practice. Smart's used the word rusty to describe, shaking the rust off, in other words, when it comes to Daniels. Maybe the throw to Jermaine Burton today that resulted in an interception, maybe an example of that. There's a possibility here that the things that Smart has been saying about JT, that it was accurate. It was meant to be taken at face value. It was not an attempt of a coach to play some mind games or keep his opponent guessing, keep the media guessing, keep the fans who follow the team through the media to keep them guessing, that maybe perhaps all of this really was and has been and continues to be exactly the way that Smart has described it. A quarterback who was the starter, who's been hurt, who's been working his way back, and in the time that he's been injured and away, Georgia's grown to believe that Stetson Bennett's also a quarterback that it can win with. Maybe today was an evidence and an example of that kind of on both sides. But certainly for a lot of Georgia fans, just the fact that Daniels got some snaps, just the fact that he got a chance to play, I think is going to be treated as pretty good news. Beyond that, maybe the best news of all for Georgia today, and if I'm thinking about my own personal memory of the game, what I'll take with this into the coming weeks is the fact that you also saw the return of some wide receivers that you've been wanting to see and hoping they could make an impact, and they did make a big impact today. The kind of thing that whether it's Daniels or Bennett playing quarterback moving forward, you think the explosive nature of this Georgia offense could be added to because of what Jermaine Burton now provides. He was very close to having 3 touchdowns today, ultimately out at the 1 twice, and finally got a touchdown there at the end, and his presence was obviously felt. Arian Smith comes in, makes his presence felt there as well. You look at the overall stat line for Smith now in his career, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's amazing how explosive he's been in the limited moments he's had to really be on the field and get those touches. This is a guy that certainly makes maximum opportunity of that. He's clearly a deep threat guy. He caught a beautiful touchdown pass today, and what I thought was also a pretty good throw by Bennett on that. Not every throw that Bennett made today was perfect, but certainly the throw to Arian Smith on the touchdown was a very well-thrown ball, and obviously Smith makes a great play to make the catch there too. So the presence of guys like Arian Smith, the presence of guys like Jermaine Burton certainly give you a boost, and it's fun to think about what this team might be doing offensively as you start to bring those guys in the mix. Obviously, it was another statistically dominant day for the Georgia defense in terms of only yielding the 6 points. Some Georgia fans are going to say, well, what about some of the quarterback runs? What about the fact that maybe Missouri moved the ball better than you would almost expect a 40-point underdog to be able to do, which ultimately what the point spread was leading into the start of the game. I don't probably take too much from that one way or another. Georgia was substituting pretty liberally for the most part on defense today. I think the emergence of Trayvon Walker has been fun to watch. Obviously, Nolan Smith had another very good game today, following up on what was a really career-defining game for him against Florida last week, and Trayvon Walker is very much the same way and all of that. It's this Georgia defensive front, especially the defensive line, has been so dominant all season long that it's very easy for even very good players to get lost in the shuffle, very good players to get almost forgotten and get less attention than some of the others. And Trayvon Walker might be an example of that. This is one of the best players, one of the most talented players in the country. This is a guy who has a very bright NFL future, and it's kind of nice here over the course of the last couple of weeks, today in particular, to see Walker get some of the attention that he very much deserves. So that's kind of some early thoughts from me. We'll obviously roll through those a lot throughout the game. Before we're done, we'll also talk about what I thought was a very fitting and very emotional tribute at halftime for former Georgia coach Mark Richt. I thought this was well done by the Red Coat Band. I thought it was well done by the program all the way around. Just really good stuff, and so we'll celebrate that a bit before we're done today, too. So that's kind of the story on my end. We're live at the UGA Bookstore. It's our Dog Nation postgame show. I'm glad to have you with us. I'll give you a chance now to weigh in on your thoughts of kind of whatever you've seen from all of this with Georgia and Missouri today. And if you'll allow me to stumble and bumble here a little bit, I'll get these comments pulled up. Let's see if we can get this going here on the Dog Nation homepage. I wanted to go there first today because I feel like when we're on the road, sometimes we're a little slow in getting over to the homepage. So we'll see if we can start there right now on that. Brian Durden says, great team win, go Dogs. And I think team win's a pretty good way to describe that. Obviously, you had contributions all the way around from a lot of different names. A lot of guys had a chance to touch the ball today. A lot of folks got involved on defense. So if you want to call it a great team win, that's certainly one of those that I would say is a pretty good description for that. We'll also check in over here on Facebook there as well. We'll find out what folks are saying on our feed there on Facebook as our Dog Nation postgame show rolls along. And I'll remind you, there was a great collection of autographs here, autograph signings today at the UGA bookstore. Coach Rick was here a little earlier. And obviously Coach Vince Dooley, the legendary former coach, he was on hand there as well. So Buck Ballou, Lindsey Scott, I believe they stopped by there too. Folks continue to come by and see us. So this is really the place to be on game day, before the game and after the game and all the other times there as well. A great chance to be a part of the fun. It's just right across the bridge really from the stadium, right next to the Tate Center is the UGA bookstore, so you can come see us. The comfortable sweatshirt that I'm wearing right now is from the UGA bookstore. So a great opportunity, as you see the tree next to me, to come get some holiday shopping done. Get ready for all that, as Christmas will be here before you know it. And obviously expects to be a fun run to the Christmas and holiday season here with Georgia ranked number 1 right now. So a lot of folks checking in. We'll take your comments more as we do that. Daniel Hancock says, why don't we let 99 run one in instead of blocking on the goal line? Daniel, I would be lying if I didn't think the same thing, that obviously when Jordan Davis does come in on the big goal line play and, open up the hole in such a great way that leads to the Georgia touchdown, I want Davis to get a touchdown so bad. We've done the hashtag JDNYC. We've had some fun with the idea of Jordan Davis as a kind of an avatar, a representative for this Georgia defense, as a Heisman Trophy candidate because of that. And if you really want to take that to the next level, one of the fun ways to do that would be to to let Davis get in the end zone, let him get that touchdown. I'd love for that to be able to happen at some point in time. Today would have been a good day to do it, so maybe that's still on its way to coming, Daniel. But your mind is very similar to mine on that. Eric Draven says, please light a fire under the players to keep the main thing the main thing. Honestly, I thought the player level of focus today was actually probably pretty high. I will admit that before the game, I thought the vibe in the stadium was frankly pretty low. And, every now and then you have a noon game that really feels like a noon game. I thought today really felt like a noon game coming in. I always judge this. I live in the Atlanta area, so I'm driving over to Athens on game day, and I'm always judging how intense everything's going to be, especially for a noon start, by how bad traffic is coming in, because there are a couple, fairly typical bottlenecks where you expect to see some traffic. Traffic is a little lighter today. It was a little bit of an idea that some Georgia fans had decided to come right before game time. They weren't doing the tailgating. I'm not saying it was a bad vibe. I'm just saying it was a little much more subdued. You compare this to, say, Arkansas, for instance, where you probably had, it's been said, and I think it's not an exaggeration, greatest noon crowd of all time, greatest noon, energy in the stadium that there had ever been for an early start like that. If that was true for Arkansas, that was probably not true pregame today. So there wasn't quite as much crowd energy for this team to feed off of, but I actually thought the overall player level of focus was pretty high. They kind of created their own level of energy today and probably did a pretty good job of doing that. So I agree with your point that obviously when you're ranked number one, you're going to be playing a relatively nondescript collection of games over the course of the next few weeks. Keeping your level of focus high is going to be important, and today you saw an example of that. Next week at Tennessee, that'll probably also generate a pretty high level of focus. That's a loud SEC stadium. Good to see folks stopping by and seeing us here at the UGA bookstore, by the way. That's always a great thing to be able to see. So my guess is Georgia pretty motivated next Saturday for Tennessee in the midst of a November stretch that, for the most part, probably is not filled with a lot of high-profile games here at the moment. Chuck Pearson brings up JT Daniels saying that he needs to start against Tennessee. And, look, maybe that'll happen at some point. Maybe we'll see Daniels, who played some today, get a chance to play more during that game. But as I said before, by playing Daniels, I think Georgia's showing you, Smart in particular, Todd Monken in particular, they're showing you that JT Daniels is still very much an option to be this team's quarterback for the stretch run that really starts in December for UGA. But I think you also see the way that things play out today, that some of the things that Smart has said to us about this quarterback situation, I think that you're led to believe that maybe Smart should have been taking at his word and all of that, too. So there's that. Myra Herbert Bush says that the Charlie Brown Christmas tree next to me. Maybe so, a little bit. It's kind of a small desktop tree here. Got the red and black going. By the way, the great Miriam Martin Corbin is here, so it's always great to see her on hand. And all of you come by to see us here at the UGA bookstore. That's always a fun thing to be able to do. But, yeah, it is a little smaller tree. It looks good on here on the desktop there. It was actually over on the corner, and I thought, why not bring this prop over here and enjoy that? We're getting ready for the holiday season around here, so why not do a little bit of that? Mike Anderson says, talking about being rusty, one bad Stetson Bennett away from being starter. So obviously Georgia is in a position that I would say when it comes to quarterback more good than bad. Good in that you had a quarterback that played very capably for you when JT Daniels wasn't healthy, and also good now to have another healthy player back. I mean, this is one of those things that you don't overthink. When you add a guy like JT Daniels back into the mix of available players for you, you are adding a healthy, capable, talented football player. And just at face value, that in itself is clearly a very good thing. And so how Smart will deploy these guys between Daniels and Bennett, that still is, to be determined. But it's obviously a good thing when you add a healthy player like Daniels back. And for some Georgia fans that maybe have the concern that Daniels would be healthy but stand on the sideline and remain unused, I think today shows you that's probably not true. That Daniels was healthy enough that he could have played last week against Florida. We're led to believe that's the first time that's been true in a number of weeks. He just didn't. And a lot of Georgia fans thought that was outrageous that he didn't. But the notion that maybe he really was trying to still shake the rust off after having just returned to practice, I think you're once again led to believe there's a very good chance that's possibly true. And today, after having another full week of practice and seemingly working his way back in even more, Daniels was rewarded apparently with that practice work, with getting a chance to play, and the odds of this now increasing more playing time in future weeks, I would have to say that seems like a pretty good chance right now. Does he ever fully overtake Bennett? I guess I'm probably not comfortable making a prediction about that one way or another. But the presence of Daniels in today's game, I think, shows you that Daniels is still very much a part of Georgia's plans at the quarterback position, and certainly an option to be that guy that gets the true snaps that matter come December and January. And no surprise, a lot of Georgia fans want to talk about that here today. We'll also give you some of Kirby Smart's words in his post-game press conference on what he says about the quarterback spot when he gets a chance to speak about that later on. We'll share that to you. Philip Jordan Wells, always love to see his comments there on Facebook, says he thinks Tennessee's going to lose by 30. Maybe that's the case. Let's see what else is kind of rolling in here on Facebook there as well. Alaric Lindquist says we need to get Darnell Washington more touches. He's a load. And, yeah, obviously that's one of the most dynamic weapons that Georgia has. And continuing to find creative ways to get him involved is clearly pretty important. I thought the way that Georgia used Brock Bowers today was also kind of interesting in terms of the kind of flare-out catch he had a chance to get and make a man miss in kind of a one-on-one situation. So Georgia does get the ball to Darnell Washington, got the ball to Brock Bowers. Also, when J.T. Daniels came into the game, John Fitzpatrick was rewarded with a catch there. So tight ends touching the football, but a multitude of tight ends playing, and at least 3 different tight ends today getting a chance to touch the ball. Also, did Brett Seither get a catch late? I know he was targeted late. I'm trying to remember. Did he also get a catch? So you may have had 4 different tight ends today who got a catch. By the way, we're underway. First quarter from College Station. No score right now between Auburn and Texas A&M. We will keep that score close in our minds here. Keith Fold says that he can't shake off the rust without playing. That's exactly right. And that's why Daniels, I think, got a chance to play today, so he could regain some of that chemistry and regain some of that timing. And that's exactly what right now I would say that Georgia's giving him a chance to do. George Ann Olive says it was good to see J.T. Daniels, that he looked good considering how long he's been off. And that's, I think, true. I mean, Daniels missed not only a good bit of game time, but a good bit of practice time there as well. So to see him getting a chance to be back here and healthy enough to now be able to play in today's game and really get a lot of snaps there in the second half. If you're a Georgia fan, you take that as good news. A lot of you are JT Daniels fans, of course, and you take that as good news too. So plenty to celebrate with the return of Daniels here today, and frankly also plenty to celebrate with the way that Stetson Bennett played, I would say, for the most part there as well. Not every throw that he made was a perfect one, but he certainly made some good throws, and Georgia scored plenty of points today. Continuing a streak where now Georgia scored 30 or more points in every game since the Week 1 opener against Clemson, and getting above 40 here today. So this is not a very good Missouri defensive team, so you won't oversell that. But this is a Georgia offense that's showing up consistently week after week, putting up really pretty high point totals. And Georgia has right now a pretty sizable chance of ending the season averaging more points per game than at any point in time prior to this in the Kirby Smart era. So that's something to keep in mind there. Noah Sheldon on some of those defensive backs are still looking to get more playing time. Obviously, in the case of Amir Speed, he's been trying to work his way back from injury. And, Georgia did substitute and play pretty liberally today with some guys really pretty early in the game. You saw Bullard get in the game pretty early, and, you saw a lot of guys getting a chance to play. So Georgia tried to use today, I think, to keep players healthy, but also get some touches and some time for certain guys. And there's unfortunately just never going to quite be enough of that to go around. Let's see what else. Let's see what else is going on here. Let's check it on the YouTube side of things. Beat Hustle says, how are we feeling about the offensive line play today? Beat, I think that's a really good question. And, you can talk about the offensive line in particular. You can talk about the Georgia running game overall, where obviously this wasn't a Missouri team that had been very successful against rush defense coming into today. The overall rush numbers for Georgia end up not looking particularly good. I don't have the full stats in front of me, but those numbers are going to end up not looking particularly good today. Obviously, they were running into a pretty heavy box all day long. Missouri is putting, 8 guys in the line of scrimmage, it seemed like. So I think it's a fair question to say, well, what is a reasonable level of expectation for your rushing attack when you're facing that kind of stacked line of scrimmage, when obviously that's what Missouri had decided they want to try to take away from you here today. That's clearly what they wanted to do. And for the most part, they used a bunch of bodies to be able to do that. So let's look at the overall numbers for Georgia when it comes to rushing today. Let's see how they end up today. You kind of as predicted, just 168 yards on the ground, end up averaging 5.1 yards per carry. That's actually a better yards per carry number than I almost expected to see. They do get 2 rushing touchdowns today. Some of this also coming late in terms of the rushing success. Clearly, Georgia found itself in a situation where they determined, I think correctly so, going to have to throw the ball today to move the football. There were just too many bodies at the line of scrimmage trying to take away that Georgia run. This is not a good Missouri defense. They're not good enough, frankly, to play complementary defense where they're set up to stop the run and the pass. They just simply have to pick one and hope they picked correctly. And for a while today, it seemed like they might have in terms of the overall rushing attack. But ultimately, the overall numbers end up looking pretty good. And obviously, Georgia transitions and kind of does some stuff through the air. James Cook does get a rushing touchdown. Zamir White also got a rushing touchdown there as well. Leading rusher today, though, just Cook with 41 yards. That's kind of an example of that. Also getting some post-game comments kind of rolling in here. We'll get some of those. Stetson Bennett referencing the fact that he saw Blooper, the Braves mascot. That was obviously a pretty big deal around here today, that the Braves mascot, and also Jock Peterson was on hand there as well. So the World Series champion Atlanta Braves, and it still feels and sounds very fun to say that, the World Series champion Atlanta Braves were well represented here today with Blooper and Jock Peterson. That was a lot of fun. And Stetson Bennett says he noticed that there as well. Also praising Arian Smith for his speed, and clearly you saw that. And I said before that I just sort of have a little bit of an intuition that in a big game before it's all said and done, that Arian Smith's going to make a huge play for Georgia here this year. And you look at his overall stat line, I'm talking about for his career, and you see that. He doesn't have a huge number of catches, but he's got multiple touchdowns and really just a small number of catches because, seemingly when Georgia throws to Smith, they're swinging for the fences. They're going for the big home run reception. They're going for the touchdown there, and he's been really good at producing that. So I just get the sense, as Stetson Bennett alludes to with his post-game comment, that the speed that he possesses is really unlike anybody else part of the Georgia offense right now, that when you have a big moment, and before this season is done, there will be some. Georgia hasn't played a close game seemingly in forever, but it will play a close game before this season draws to a close. And in a close game like that, the presence of a speedster like Smith changes everything. And whether it's Bennett throwing the football to him or JT Daniels throwing the football to him, you certainly have a chance to see a guy like that make a huge play. Also a stat kind of rolling in here. Georgia allows 6 points today. The point per game average is now it goes to 5.4 points per game. That's how much Georgia's averaging right now. And is that not just a remarkable point total to only be allowing 5.4 points per game and actually have that number going up now because of this 9 games into a season? Amazing to think that's where Georgia is here at this point in time. So that coming from our producer back in Atlanta, Michael Carvel. We appreciate him sharing that. He'll obviously continue to share some things with us as we roll on here. Let me get some more YouTube comments or Dog Nation postgame show. We're live at the UJ Bookstore, and it's great to see so many folks packed in here. And it's also kind of fun. This is one of my favorite times of the year because when you're, and I'm going to speak as a man here for a moment, but when you're UJ Bookstore in September and October, so much of the stuff that's flying off the shelves there at that point in time are the golf shirts. The short sleeves, that's what folks want to be wearing, and obviously ladies have their own choices with stuff like that. But from a male perspective, it's those golf shirts that are so popular. But you flip that calendar to November, you get into this time of year, it's the sweatshirts like I'm wearing right now. This, by the way, came from the UG bookstore here today. So I'm, nice fleecy sweatshirt here, feeling pretty good in that. The quarter zip pullovers, we all love those. Those are starting to fly off the shelves down there. So a lot of folks kind of turning their attention to that cooler weather and warmer clothes to do that with. And, of course, the UGA bookstore, a great place to be able to do that. Also, great day of autograph signings. Coach Rick was here earlier signing copies of his brand new book. Coach Dooley was here as well. That's always fun. Legends like Buck Bellew, Lindsey Scott, they were on hand. That's the way it goes down each and every week. There's a home game here in Athens. Big doings at the UGA bookstore, and just one home game left here for the 2021 season. So crazy to think how quickly it all goes by, but just one more chance to enjoy us here at the bookstore and enjoy this time between the hedges, and obviously we'll take full advantage of all of that. All right, let's see what else is going on here. Crow King 123 on the subject of Dejon Edwards. Listen, I absolutely think that Dejon Edwards is a very capable running back. It shows you the depth that Georgia has at the running back position. And frankly, if you're one of those teams, and you know this is true, like no player and coach is ever going to admit this, but you know this is true, that when you get into the game late in a situation like this in Georgia, a lot of the time you're just kind of ready for the exit. You're just ready for the game to be over with. And, if you're playing a starter level player or something like that, at least there's a chance he might be tired. And so maybe, he's giving it less than 100% because he's just been in the game all day long. But when Georgia turns its attention late in the game, almost like a human victory cigar with Dejon Edwards, that is a tough guy to try to bring down when he's fresh as a daisy late in the game, probably a little bit mad that he hasn't played more, just because that's human nature. He comes in there running like a madman. Imagine how just dispiriting that is for an opposing defense. You're just trying to get back on the bus and get on the plane and go home, and now you got, absolutely fresh, absolutely fired up Dejon Edwards. You're going to try to tackle that guy late in the game. I can promise you that. That's not fun. Not fun at all. Crow King 123 also mentioning Ohio State, who did struggle a little bit today with Nebraska. I didn't see the final score on that, but you better believe that folks are going to be paying attention to this. It's one of the reasons why the playoff selection committee ranked Oregon ahead of Ohio State this past week. It's not solely because of the head-to-head win. It's also because Ohio State had not been particularly impressive against Penn State the week before, and now struggling a little bit, although I admittedly have not seen the final score. But when I was paying attention to this game earlier, struggling a little bit against Nebraska today, that is not the kind of beauty pageant type win that's going to earn them a lot of faith. So that is certainly fair to say. Jay Shipes checking in. He says, I got nothing but a national championship on my brain, so Jay's obviously having fun here, and that's the goal for Georgia right now. Let's see what else Let's see what else going on here. Kimmer checks in to say UGA is a class act school, hands down. Yeah, listen, Georgia always does it right for a situation like this. I thought the way, several things today. I thought the way in which the Atlanta Braves were celebrated today, that was a great thing to be able to see. I thought obviously rolling out the red carpet for some of these recruits as per usual, making them feel right at home, that's always a fun thing to be able to see. And, of course, the halftime tribute for Mark Richt. We'll talk more about this before we're done today. I just thought Georgia did such a good job with that. And huge credit to the Redcoat Band, who obviously today played with a heavy heart. They referenced the recent loss of life for someone who had a deep connection to the Redcoat Band. So they obviously had a lot on their mind and have had a lot on their collective minds throughout this season. But what they did for Coach Richt with the music they selected for the halftime show, this was just really cool. Kimmer says it correctly in the comment section. Really just a class act program. And you just always get the feeling that Georgia does it right on a game day situation like this. Jeremy Harbin says we can beat anyone with Stetson, in my opinion. So Stetson Bennett is winning over some folks, including Jeremy Harbin right there. Strong take from him. Munkin's headset says Bama's going to lose in the Iron Bowl. We're obviously watching Auburn today, and don't forget, an Auburn win here, sometimes tiebreakers can be a little bit confusing for me because I'm not that smart, but a win here for Auburn would set them up in kind of a control-your-own-destiny situation where they'd have a chance to beat Alabama and win the SEC West. I've already heard from a few Auburn fans that I know personally in my own life who are saying they're going to get the rematch against Georgia in the SEC championship game, maybe circa 2017, a throwback to that. So maybe that still happens. Obviously, Alabama got the prestigious number 2 ranking behind Georgia this week in the college football playoff rankings, but it's fair to say they still have some business to take care of in that Iron Bowl game. So some folks have that on their mind right now. The ZMO says we should try to allow 4 points per game. Yeah, listen, obviously you heard Kobe Dean last week. They gave up 7 points, and he was furious about that. So clearly the standard for Georgia is 0 points, 0 yards, 0 everything. They just want, as they say in soccer, they just want a clean sheet. They want zeros across the board, and they are getting pretty close to being able to say they're doing just that. Another day today where they dominate defensively. A lot of folks checking in all the way around here. Somebody mentions that Wake Forest UNC game. What was the final score there? Let me go over to Facebook here for a moment. We'll get a few comments there. Good to have you here on the Dog Nation postgame show here this evening. Hugh Nash says it's important for JT to play now and knock the rust off and build back chemistry. It's also great seeing Burton, Karras, Arian Smith, Washington involved, getting our key pieces back at the right time. Totally agree on that, and I really totally agree with the first part of that there as well. It is important for JT Daniels to play and get that rust knocked off. I think you have to understand, though, that there's a little bit of a process for that, how that happens. I would say that it becomes very reasonable to believe that Daniels may have spent the week prior against Florida knocking that rust off during practice. Remember, practices at a place like Georgia are intense, light games. Daniels showing last week that he was on his way back to being ready to earn snaps during a game here this week after really being hurt and limited and incapable seemingly of making all the throws, the total number of throws, all the throws that a quarterback like Daniels wants to make, needs to make, that over the course of the last couple of weeks of practice, Daniels has demonstrated that he's ready to be able to do that during a game, and he took some steps today to get even more playing time in the future. And I actually believe that's probably where all this is heading. And does it ultimately result in a situation where both Daniels and Bennett are playing during games, or does Daniels, who was the starter on this team before the season began, does he return exclusively to that role before the season's done? I'm not quite ready to commit myself to one opinion or the other on that, but this is clearly not the last time we're going to hear from Daniels, assuming he remains healthy. And I would say in the future there's chances he plays even more and perhaps enters the game even sooner now that he's showing himself to seemingly be a little healthier now and ready to go out and do some more. Matt Rukavina says, was it me or did Mizzou talk a lot of smack being down 30-plus points? I didn't see that, but obviously I couldn't help but remember Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz, who certainly looks less like an SEC coach than any coach who's ever coached in the SEC, when he had the celebratory video when five-star wide receiver Luther Burden committed to the Tigers a couple of weeks ago. I have to admit, watching Georgia beat up on Missouri today, that did bring back that video to my mind there from time to time. I have to admit that's the case. Braden Harbuck says Ohio State looked bad today. Yeah, I mean, Braden, when I was trying to follow that and watch it, I have to agree with you. I didn't think they looked very good either. So that's a little bit of a blight on their attempt to keep pace with the national elite. And, Ohio State's one of these teams, probably like Alabama a bit, where they think they're supposed to get the free pass and the benefit of the doubt because of the big brand name they carry around the sport. But you gotta play well to maintain that. And right now they're just not. Or at least the last couple of weeks they haven't. Richard Pollard wants to see Darnell Washington get a minimum of 5 targets per game, and I mean, I think some of that. I don't disagree with you necessarily. I'd like to see Washington targeted multiple times too, but just to play devil's advocate for a moment, I think part of the issue there is you saw multiple tight ends targeted today for Georgia, so keep that in mind. So R.C. Fulgham gives this to us. So North Carolina won 58-55. There were 113 points scored in that game today. That's pretty remarkable. Obviously, this is a Wake Forest team that scored against everybody. It's also fair to point out that UNC was a 3-point favorite in the game. So if that truly was the final score, then that's in keeping with what the experts thought it was going to be. And UNC is clearly a high-powered offense, too. Also, in kind of a weird twist, this was not a conference game today. There's a stipulation now. You got to play the Power 5 non-conference games. Some ACC teams schedule against each other. And so this is not a conference game today for Wake and UNC. So if you're looking ahead to a potential ACC championship game, Wake Forest does remain unbeaten in ACC play. So just keep that in mind. File that away. Philip Jordan Wells looking ahead to net points on Georgia. Obviously looking ahead to that game against the Vols, which is really, I think it's going to be interesting to watch how Tennessee performs against Kentucky, but clearly the only seeming remaining test in the regular season still to come for Georgia. And one of those games, I think at one point in time, folks thought maybe a bigger test for Georgia than certainly I thought it would be at the beginning of the season. This is a Tennessee team that's moved the football pretty well. They actually lost 2 consecutive games coming into Saturday against Kentucky, but played well against Ole Miss, certainly moving the football, fought with Alabama gamely in the first half. So, Georgia's going to be a big favorite. Georgia's going to be expected to do big things on the road. But overall, it'll be kind of another interesting measuring stick and perhaps the final measuring stick for Georgia before you start thinking about December in the SEC championship. More comments rolling in here at DogNation.com. Matthews 1 also wants to see JT get more game reps. Stuart Wiggins says mailman delivered again. So on both sides of the issue, quarterback talk remains a little bit of a hot topic. We'll go over here to YouTube here for a little bit there too, continuing to weigh in on all of this. Munkin's headset gives you the hashtag JD to NYC. Good to see folks stopping by and seeing us here at the UGA bookstore there as well. And nice to see JD get himself a couple big plays today. Also getting a chance to get some much-needed rest and staying healthy, and that's part of the story here this time of year for Georgia. Jeremy Harbin says, on one of those short passes to Burton. He should have gone left. He could have gotten in easy. Ultimately does get a touchdown, but on 2 receptions, he was stopped there at the 1-yard line. Jeremy Harbin also says it's hard to get 5 targets to someone when they have so many weapons and everybody's getting open. Clearly today, Georgia seemed quite content to spread the ball around to a bunch of different guys. Buddy Lord says, I think that JT is done at UG, honestly. Yeah, I don't get the impression that JT's done by a long shot, nor do I get the impression that Georgia's done with him. Now, listen, no guarantees, folks. Thanks, folks, for stopping by and seeing us. No guarantee here where it's going with Daniels here the rest of the season, but Daniels was a part of the story today. Georgia had the intention, seemingly, to get Daniels in the game. He came in. He showed that he's healthy. Not every throw that he made was a great one. The interception, he probably would like to have had that back. But, you're not going to judge him too harshly for that. The same way you're not going to judge Stetson Bennett for a couple throws today that were also throws he probably would have liked to have had back. In fact, a couple of Stetson Bennett's, big receptions were receptions that you probably have to give a lot of credit to the receivers for helping bring in there. So we're not going to analyze every single completion that was made today, but the good news is that Daniel showed himself to be healthy and obviously putting himself in line for even more playing time going forward. Let's see what else is kind of going on here. There was the moment I think it's going to be worth paying attention to late in this game today. Georgia did a lot of substituting today. Some of that was on the offensive line. There was a moment when Amarius Mims comes in at right tackle in place of Warren McClendon. McClendon, was he banged up? Was this a planned substitution, just Georgia trying to get Mims some work? I think it'll be worth watching to see if some folks on social media thought they'd seen maybe McClendon get a little bit banged up before he left the game. So it'll be worth trying to find out if McClendon's departure here was due to maybe precautionary measures just sitting out, or if they were just looking to get Amarius Mims involved in the game there. I mentioned before, today being a noon game, and I thought the vibe was subdued before the game. I was kind of wondering, given the fact the weather was a little bit cold, how much better the atmosphere would have been at night. Obviously, night games are always better than noon games, but given the fact that Georgia was a big favorite, Missouri doesn't really bring a lot of juice themselves into the game. It was cold. You kind of wonder how much bigger and better this atmosphere would have been at night. Obviously, it's going to end up being kind of a disappointing season for Georgia in that way. You got the 2 games of the ESPN College Game Day. Ultimately, you really only got the one night game. The South Carolina game is going to come and go as being the only night game for Georgia at Sanford Stadium this year. I think for a lot of fans, that's going to be a little bit disappointing. Today was certainly a day where it felt pretty noony in the stadium today, if you kind of get my drift on all of that. By the way, also a note here, Walter Nolan, you may remember him as a guy that we've talked about related to Georgia recruiting a lot, the 5-star defensive lineman, actually announced his pledge to Texas A&M today. So Texas A&M stays pretty hot in the recruiting trail. Jimbo Fisher's done a good job with that program, and I guess by acquiring Nolan on the recruiting trail, I think that also, not that it wasn't before, but if there was any doubt that Big Bear Alexander was going to stick with Georgia, the acquisition of Nolan by Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies, I think probably seals the deal that Bear Alexander's coming to Georgia, and A&M lost out on the one-time in-state product. Of course, Alexander no longer lives in the state of Texas. He now plays at IMG Academy. He's getting ready to be on his way to Georgia. So the Nolan commitment to Texas A&M will reverberate for a number of reasons. Let's see what else is going on. Caleb W140 says Kirby Smart makes terrible decisions with quarterbacks. That's why he's the most talented quarterback he's ever had. I've transferred. And if I was JT's dad, I'd tell him to transfer there as well. Here's the problem, though, Caleb. I think today, the evidence that you have in front of your eyes, I think that argues against your idea that Smart has somehow made a bad decision at quarterback. I think if Kirby Smart were here today, I think he would tell you that over the course of the last few weeks, he made the only decision that was available to him. And I think that he would say that as a Georgia fan, if you are one, then you ought to be glad that with Daniels unavailable to him, that Georgia was very fortunate to have a guy like Stetson Bennett step in and play as well as he did. And that it's only just now a scenario where Daniels even available back to Georgia once again. And he's apparently healthier this week than he was a week ago. He's certainly had more practice time under his belt. He had a chance to play a pretty good bit today. It wasn't just handoff situations. He was able to throw. He's shaking some of that rust off. But the idea that that Daniels wasn't still quite what he had once been because of the amount of time that he missed. I think what you saw with your own eyes today, I think, gives credence to that as an idea. So you criticize Smart for his decision, but it's not obvious. It's far from apparent there was even much of a decision to make. JT Daniels hasn't been healthy enough to practice, and unhealthy to practice means unavailable to play. And I think that's all this probably really is. And this is one of those things where if the media was doing this, then obviously there'd be pitchforks coming out for the media trying to fan the flames and turn this into a quarterback competition. But this is another example of something I've been saying all along, that the issue with the Georgia quarterbacks, the only people trying to make this a controversy are the fans themselves. Not all fans, but some fans. It's not happening within the team. Everybody is going out of their way to say the right stuff, including the two quarterbacks themselves. The body language between Bennett and Daniels during the game is certainly fine, but the players themselves say all the right things here. For the most part, I think the media has gotten this right with its coverage. Not that the media is a monolith, but for the most part, the media has identified, the full breadth of what's going on here with the Georgia quarterback situation, the good and the bad, the positive and the negative for both guys. But there are some fans who seemingly want to turn this into some sort of controversy of something that I don't think the actual facts argue for in a situation like this. What Georgia has at quarterback is more good than bad. It's got a multitude of healthy guys. It's got a couple of guys that it can now turn to. And today it found two quarterbacks who, for the most part, both played pretty capably, although neither guy made perfect throws all the way around. Let's get some more comments here from Kirby Smart. He says today he thought Georgia started out sloppy in today's game. I don't think there's any disputing that's true. Obviously, it's a 60-minute game, so you look forward to have the chance to pull away late. That's kind of what Georgia did. But there was a little bit of a slow start today, and maybe that's to be expected with everything that's going on around a game like that. Also calling out Broderick Jones. I'm guessing here he was probably asked about Broderick Jones, who played today against Jamari Salyer. Most of you are aware that, as was reported on Friday morning, Salyer's sustained a foot injury that kept him out today. Likely going to keep him out next week too. Smart says that his replacement, Broderick Jones, the former five-star tackle, now getting a chance to start for the first time. And he had a couple of lack of focus plays. So obviously right now, Smart continuing to maintain a high standard for guys like that coming in the game. And we'll find out more about the evaluation of Jones later on. But a pretty pointed comment there from Smart about how he thought Broderick Jones played today. Also saying it was a great honor to have Coach Mark Richt there today. I thought the Richt stuff was really terrific. And Kirby saying that Tennessee's played better than their scores have indicated. I think this is probably true. And, I don't mind telling you, if you watch Dog Nation Daily or if you listen to Dog Nation Daily, you hear me spout opinions all the time. For the most part, Tennessee has been better this year than I thought they'd be. We knew they'd move the football offensively, and they've done that. And really, Hendon Hooker's turned out to be their better quarterback, better than Milton. Obviously, Harrison Bailey's now out of the program. But Hendon Hooker's proven himself to be the best quarterback on that roster, so there's no problem there with him. But for the most part, Tennessee's even played a little bit better defense. Scrappy is probably the better word. Tennessee's played scrappier defense than I expected them to. That they have not quit. A lot of guys who are in roles they would not be in if there hadn't been so many transfers out of the program. Tennessee is Tennessee better than Florida right now? I don't know, but Tennessee is clearly much better than Missouri and much better than most of the teams that Georgia's played recently. It'll be curious to see what the point spread is when that game comes out next week. Alabama's obviously a very big favorite when it played Tennessee. If you want to play the comparison game, what was Bama, about 28.5 at home? So is Georgia going to be a 25-point favorite on the road at Tennessee next week? It's still a pretty big spread, but for the most part, this is a better team than most of what Georgia's played now for a good while here. Kirby also says we don't limit the playbook based on the health of the quarterback. So there you go on that. Let's get some more Facebook comments here. It's our Dog Nation post-game show. Of course, glad to have all of you with us here. Barry Scott says, good to see both quarterbacks. Thanks, Kirby. And, Barry, what I'll add to this is that I'm not going to lie to you. There's a part of me that kind of wondered, was JT Daniels going to play again? I started the show by saying this, and I'll circle back to this right now, that Kirby's kind of been a one quarterback at a time type guy. You think about 2018, that was for the most part clearly Jake Fromm's team. Maybe Justin Fields had a chance to win that job post LSU. Fromm played well against Florida. It didn't really happen. But when Fields came in 2018, for the most part, he's just handing the football off. Other than what? It was like the UMass game late in the season. Other than that, Fields almost never got a chance to throw. That it was he just wasn't the quarterback that was going to be given that chance to do that. 2017, you'll remember Fromm came in for Eason first game against Appalachian State when Jacob got hurt. And then when Eason was healthy again, he never really got the opportunity to throw again. That it became Fromm's team, and Eason didn't get his chance back in 2017. And so part of me wondered, well, have they just settled on Stetson Bennett and they're not coming back to JT Daniels? Well, today showed you that, no, that's not quite the case, that this still really is a situation where both quarterbacks are involved. Now, to what percentage, and does it ever swing back where it's exclusively JT Daniels' team again and it's his game to win one way or another? I don't know the answer to that. But certainly Daniels showed today, Georgia showed with Daniels, that he's still very much part of the story around here. Let's get some more of your Facebook comments. Folks kind of rolling on here. Matt Rukavina says, fun fact, at least one of our defensive linemen is held on every single play. There was one moment where, I don't even know what his name is, but big number 70 from Missouri, he was holding. He held the entirety of the play. He was still holding after the play was done. I actually forget who was even holding, but some of these holds are just spectacular. Some of these holds are just like nothing you've ever seen. So I agree with you on that. Clarence Dawson says, how bad is the Mims injury? I didn't say Mims got hurt. I said I was going to be waiting to see if Mims came in because McClendon may have gotten banged up. Unless you're talking about something I don't know about. I was waiting to see if Mims entered the game because of a precautionary thing with McClendon, or if that was just a pre-planned or game-time decision to get Mims a little experience, get him a little bit of playing time. Let's see what else. John Thomas Patchett says, I love Bennett's chip on the shoulder. He has he says an FU attitude. He's got what it takes to take us all the way. So, yeah, no doubt Bennett's got some of his fans there as well. No doubt that both these quarterbacks, and hopefully they're Georgia fans that can be fans of both guys and appreciate the different things that they both bring to the table. And I think that, Daniels has certainly shown you reasons why you ought to be a fan of him. I think Stetson Bennett's shown you reasons why, if you're a UGA fan, you got to be a fan of him. Daryl Fleming also asks, my family comes to me with the games. Sometimes they do. If my son had his way, he'd come every single time. But after a while, some of these tickets get pretty expensive. I sit in the press box. They have to buy tickets, and it gets to be a little hard to buy tickets for the whole family each and every week. So they're not here today, but they certainly try to come when they can. But they are not here today. Billy Hurley says, we love seeing you as we escape the press box postgame. Danny Figueroa yelling at you like you were a rock star. Well, listen, it was great to see you all as well. One of my favorite things about coming to Athens is I always get a chance to say hello to some Georgia fans, and we get a chance to talk a little UGA football. And sometimes, as you said, it's just kind of throwing up a wave and saying hello that way. But it's my favorite thing about game time. Most of the time I stay locked in the studios. When I get to actually be able to come out in the real world, I'm always really happy about that. By the way, it's 3-3 Auburn, Texas A&M right now as the second quarter begins. They're in College Station. Peter Jeffrey Wilson says we weren't sacked today, right? And I believe that's true. JT did have a pass batted down. Did JT? Yeah, JT almost got sacked once. Did have a pass batted down, but no official sack, I don't believe. Bruce Farmer says Stetson just almost admitted he will be the starter next week and going forward, looking to play against the Vols crowd. Yeah, I don't know that I'd read too much into that. I didn't see the quote, but I don't know that I'd read too much into that one way or another. Kevin Krink says that Ohio State got away with an obvious defensive pass interference when the score was still 23-17. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Philip Jordan Wells says that JT Daniels will be back, and certainly today I think serves as a possibility that might eventually be true. Had he not played today, I'm not going to lie to you. Had he not played today, I think I'd be kind of left to wonder, well, maybe he's not going to unless something happens. But given the fact that he did play today, I think that lets you know that Kirby Smart truly is right now being more forthcoming than I think some of you are giving him credit for. And listen, this is not the official Georgia postgame show. It's not my job to carry Kirby's water on this. And I think over the years you've heard me criticize some things related to the quarterback in particular, offense maybe in particular. But in this particular case, I actually think some of y'all are being a little unfair, although today, for the most part, it's been fine. Blue Stacks Music World says, why will Kirby put Stetson in on the first half while JT is healthy, yet he won't put JT in when Stetson is healthy? Well, he did. See, some of y'all are arguing as if JT Daniels didn't play today. Like JT Daniels played a huge portion of the second half. If you were to ask Kirby Smart, well, how come it's not the first half? I think he would say because he's just now coming back from injury. In fact, when folks asked him last week, well, how come he didn't play against Florida? He said because he's just now returning to practice. He practiced some this week. I'm saying Kirby a week ago said he practiced some more than he had before. So I think what Kirby's telling you is he is working his way back into being fully ready. That's what's going on here. And I think the evidence on the field shows you that. I think that the play during the game reinforces what Smart has said. As I said before, we've got a couple of commenters who seem to be, arguing about something that didn't happen. Buddy Lord said JT played mop-up duty and Bennett's the starter. People can hate it, and I hope Stetson wins the national championship because Kirby's going to ride or die with him. But if he doesn't, it will hurt. I'm telling you right now, I just don't think that's the case. In other words, this notion that it's a made-up decision, it's a done deal. As I said, buddy, had Daniels not played today, I believe I would have thought the same thing. Now, would have I admitted this in the show? I don't know if I would have admitted it or not, but I believe I would have thought that. I really do. Had Daniels been healthy, 2 weeks removed from, kind of being back, so to speak, and still not playing, then I guess I probably would have thought, well, maybe he's just not going to unless Stetson gets hurt. But the fact that he played a good bit today, and it was, you say mop-up duty, but they let him throw a little bit. He was kind of running the offense. The fact that all that happened today, I would say there's a possibility that he plays even more against Tennessee, perhaps. That's a road game, remember that. And plays even more than that by the time the season's done. I think that the door is open for a lot of different things based on the presence of Daniels here today. I wouldn't diminish the fact that he played. I really wouldn't. Rex Ducio says Kirby simply needs to let Monken make the quarterback decisions. But here's the thing, Rex. There's no way of knowing, and I think it'd be weird to even assume that the quarterback decisions right now are anything different than what Todd Monken would want. I just think that I think you got to understand that in this particular case, there's no evidence that Monken would do anything differently or that Monken wants to do anything differently. First of all, when you look at the way this offense has performed this season, I'm talking about the results, the yards per play, the points per game. Clearly, this is a different kind of Georgia offense than has existed in the years previous to that for Todd Monken. His influence is all over the place. The idea that his influence is somehow muted by Kirby Smart, I just think that's counter to the evidence that we have available to us. Let's see what else. Thomas Fansana, you may be right, Thomas. Obviously, a lot of folks over here on the YouTube side of things also thinking about that Tennessee game next week. Yeah, it's a pretty big game. It's a pretty big game for sure. Braden Harbuck says Daniels needs to act like Jalen Hurts did when he was at Alabama. Interesting comparison there. Although, in the case of Tua Tagovailoa, in that particular case, Alabama really had decided, Nick Saban really had decided that Tua was going to be their guy. They chose Tua over Jalen Hurts, and I think it was kind of always obvious they were eventually going to do that as it was. In the case here, I think there's a number of possibilities that could still play out for Georgia this season, the quarterback spot. James Davis says it doesn't matter who starts at quarterback. We finally have two quarterbacks that are capable of winning games, and I think that certainly James is touching on what I think is mostly true here, that whatever's happening at quarterback is certainly more good than not. And frankly, it's far more good than not. By the way, this is our Dog Nation post-game show. We're live at the UGA Bookstore. We're presented by the UGA Bookstore. I got a good-looking sweatshirt on today that came from the UGA Bookstore. It feels good, too, because it's so cold outside. It feels nice to have a shirt on that looks good and feels good, and a fleecy sweatshirt like this, certainly that's the case. And down there on the first floor, all kinds of famous makers. I'm talking about Peter Millar, Tommy Bahama, Vineyard Vines, the entire collection, the Nike Coaches gear, 47 brand. So many other great apparel makers with good-looking UGA gear. You can get it all right down there on the first floor at the UGA bookstore. You can get stocked up for yourself for the big stretch run and a championship drive. You can get some as a Christmas gift. Obviously not too soon to start thinking about that. The Christmas tree next to me serves as a reminder on all of that. And, of course, you can stop by and see us. A lot of folks do that. One of the things I love over the course of the last couple of years, especially this year, now that we're back to a full crowd again, how many more people come by and see us now on game day. When we first started doing this show here live, first year we did the bookstore post-game show was 2016. Like, we may have one or two people come by and say hello, and that was always nice to see. Don't get me wrong, I'm thankful that anybody would stop by and see us. But now it's become really a part of post-game traditions for a lot of folks. They come by, they say hello, they greet us, and I love that. I get a chance to meet some folks I haven't met, say hello to some folks I haven't seen before. So when you're leaving Sanford Stadium, come by, take a couple minutes out of your time, come up here on the second floor. I'd love to say hello to you. We've even posed for pictures with folks during the show before. So if you want to come by and do that, you can walk over here and take a picture with me. I'll talk to you and pose with you. Even while we're doing the show, I got no problem doing that. So really well done. By the way, also I'm looking at the screen here. Good job by Michael Carvel getting a collection of photographs from today's game. I got to tell you, I thought the Missouri uniforms were really nice today. I thought they were really sharp-looking uniforms. That yellow helmet with the block M, with the yellow pants, I thought the Missouri uniforms were really, really nice. Really, really good, well-done stuff. So I like that. All right, let's do this. Let's get ready to do our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. And Mark Richt had a very cool tweet today thanking Dog Nation for the way that it stepped up for him today. Obviously, this was really incredible. Very well done. The Redcoat Band did a montage of songs that all related back to Richt in some way. Let me see if I can run through all of these. So it started off with, well, now I'm blanking on, like for the Hobnail boot game, they did the Nancy Sinatra song, These Boots Are Made for Walking. So they did that there. There was one they did before. They did In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins because Rick's from Miami. In the Air Tonight was a song that was once featured in Miami Vice. I don't really know what the connection to Miami is beyond that. I just remember the song once being in Miami Vice. So I guess, they kind of did that there for that. The best part of the band montage was they played Back in Black in honor of the blackout game against Auburn in 2007. But the other thing they did was, as kind of a brief interlude on that, they did a little bit of Soulja Boy, Crank That, is that the song's called, which was obviously the song that Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson danced to, when CBS was here back in 2007 for that game. So that was kind of cool. It was a great musical montage, video tribute. Rick called the Dogs today. That was fun to be able to see. There was also the video board, the Saturday in Athens thing. He did that today there as well. So that was awesome to be able to see. Just a really, really great tribute for Coach Richt. A great way to be honored here at halftime today. An unbelievable career. 2 SEC championships, multiple trips, many trips to the SEC championship game. I mean, I can remember back in 2002, for Georgia then, that was a 20-year drought of having not won the SEC. And much the same way Georgia fans now kind of crave that national championship drought coming to an end. Way back then, there was the same attitude about finally breaking through and winning the SEC title game. The SEC championship game had existed for a number of years, all the way through the 90s, and Georgia hadn't been there. And you just felt like, can Georgia ever get there? And Rick helped kick in that door for the program. And as Terrence Edwards said on Dog Nation Daily on Thursday, had there been a college football playoff during the Richt era, think about 2002, certainly, 07, certainly, 2012. Those are Georgia teams that could have made the college football playoff. Even an SEC championship year like 05, maybe you think about that being a possibility. That the Richt legacy could have been very different had the college football playoff existed sooner than it did. But ultimately, he won a lot on the field, and obviously just one of the most impactful figures in the history, not just of Georgia football, but maybe SEC football off the field. The kind of man that inspires you to want to be a better man yourself. Truly, he seems to live in a genuine and authentic manner, and I tell you, I've got great affection for him. I know a lot of Georgia fans truly love him. The ovation he got today was really spectacular. I love to be able to see it, and for everything that went down with Rick today during halftime and really throughout the game, him being here, we'll make that our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. And, of course, this weekend, as predicted, by the way, I said this yesterday that we didn't get a chance to go to the parade, so my son and his sister and My family without me, basically, we're going to get together and watch it on TV. And I said when I came home, I'd see those Marco's pizza boxes all over the place. And indeed, that was the case. A lot of the neighborhood kids came over. They watched the World Series parade. They all enjoyed a little bit of Marco's pizza and had a great time doing that. And, of course, you can do the same thing there as well. What I love about Marco's pizza is it tastes good, but it's also a great price. You get a large one-topping pizza right now for just $9.99. You can't beat that. Large one-topping pizza, $9.99. Make sure you check that out online, Marcos.com. Congratulations to Coach Richt and everybody who made today special. That's our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. John Thomas Padgett says he misses Hot Rod. Hot Rod was also here today, too. Got a big ovation along with DeAndre Swift. They were honored today. That was cool to be able to see. Back over here, Mark on the Dog Nation homepage says it was good to see Coach Richt. It really was. By the way, David G's hoping that Georgia will save JT Daniels and use him as a second-half insertion to get some revenge against Alabama, who's changed quarterbacks twice to beat Georgia in big games. That's kind of interesting to think about. A lot of folks kind of weighing in here with comments on the Dog Nation homepage. Appreciate that. Let's do about one more trip around the comment section. We'll get ready to wrap things up here today on this particular Saturday afternoon. Let y'all watch some of these football games and get ready for the weekend, the rest of the weekend. Rex Dolko says we all love Gary and Vern. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I do have great memories of that game in 2007. And Vern Lundquist, quite a character when he was doing those games. You still hear him doing the Masters each and every year, but retired from doing those games on CBS. Let's see what else. Georgia Boy 1988 says, I just don't understand how a walk-on can beat out the best quarterbacks coming out of high school, and he had some dudes in his class. Yeah, I mean, I would say that when it comes to, like, beating out for the Georgia quarterback here, I still think this is a long way away from being determined. And I think today shows you that when healthy, Smart's going to play JT Daniels. And if he's willing to play both, if Daniels truly is the better of these two quarterbacks, and I have to admit I believe that he is, but if he truly is the better of these two quarterbacks, eventually he will probably make that obvious and regain the spot that he once had. You know, the problem you have if you're a guy that believes Daniels is the best is if he's not getting to play at all, then he can't show what he's all about. But if he's playing some in games, you better believe he's also getting those practice reps too, and that becomes an opportunity for him to show what it's all about. But to go back to Georgia Boy's comment, which is just factually true, to think that Bennett, who came out of nowhere, walk on at Georgia, then cast aside, then finally given a scholarship, but really given no chance to compete for a job, ultimately to become Georgia's quarterback when it really had no other option in 2020. It's quarterback again when JT Daniels got hurt this year. It really is a remarkable story. And if it never goes anywhere beyond where it is right now, just for what Bennett's already done, it's really pretty amazing. And that's why I wish that people could stop and appreciate that. I realize the pressure of trying to win a national championship and maybe some of Kirby Smart's backstory and history when it comes to quarterback, maybe it makes that more difficult to do. But I do wish that folks could just sort of stop and appreciate what Bennett's been able to do during his Georgia career. Let's get a couple more. I know this will be the last of it. Back on Facebook a little bit here, and then we'll wrap things up. A lot of comments rolling through. I'm trying to find a good one to read before we get ready to get out of here. Braden Harbuck on the subject of Alabama. Yeah, this is a little bit different kind of Alabama team this year. They don't quite have that same explosive level of receiver they've had in the past. You know, they're still certainly a very explosive offense. We talked about in Dog Nation Dougie this week that they're Georgia and Alabama, the only two teams in the country who are in the top 10 of both offensive and defensive efficiency, and both are actually in the top 5. No one else is even in the top 10 in both categories. So I still think there's no doubt Alabama is the toughest challenge that Georgia could possibly face. There's a very good chance that Georgia still has to play them maybe at least once, if not twice, when you think about postseason potential matchups there. But it's also, I think, fair to say that this Alabama team is not quite what recent Alabama teams have been. From a quality standpoint, perhaps, but certainly from a personality standpoint, they just don't play the same way. They're not quite as explosive offensively, I don't believe. Bill Sanders says he always loves the Saturday in Athens videos. You know, those are always a lot of fun. And today, seeing Coach Richt get a chance to read that was really cool there as well. So, fun to see that. All right, so here's what's coming up. It's Tennessee next Saturday, big road date. Obviously, we're going to do a lot on Dog Nation to get you ready for that. You know, it's a step up in weight class. Georgia will still be a big favorite. Georgia will still expected to win the game and not be particularly close, but it's clearly a step up in weight class before the season's done. And if you're looking to get a measuring stick for how ready Georgia is for the SEC championship on the road, well, it'll be I'm imagining a hostile Neyland Stadium. That ends up being a pretty good test for all that, perhaps. So that's what's going to be the conversation in the week to come. Big thanks here for the UGA Bookstore for you coming by and seeing us and also tuning in to watch us. One more home game left in the 2021 season. That's hard to believe, but that's the case. So if you're lucky enough to be here the next time we're here, coming up in a couple of weeks against Charleston Southern, make the most out of that day and really soak it all in. Let's also turn our attention now to the remaining weeks ahead of what could be a big-time run towards a championship for Georgia. Georgia number 1. They win easily. They'll remain number 1, and they look to still be there when it's all said and done coming up in the month of January. This is certainly a fun season thus far, and the fun may only be just beginning. So get all the Georgia gear you need right here at the UGA Bookstore so you can be looking good for the big games that are coming up, and then we'll see you back here at the UGA Bookstore again next time. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.